At this point, she's not doing a very good job because she's about to get killed. She's not giving up any information. What she should actually do is try and craft some kind of a story that stalls or prolongs her life. Hey, this is Jocko Willink. I'm sitting in my podcast studio remotely, and this is The Breakdown. First up is Saving Private Ryan. Obviously, this scene is D-Day. The military really looked to bring a lot of people that didn't have combat experience to do the invasion on D-Day because they knew that they needed some fresh mindsets going in that weren't going to be absolutely horrified. But even with that, you can tell from this that there's a lot of fear going on because they're going into a pretty hellacious situation. You can see a lot of the guys are looking very nervous. They're trying to capture that on the camera. You see some of the guys that are actually throwing up, and they could be throwing up from being nervous. That can happen, but my guess is in this case, most of these guys are throwing up because they're seasick. They're not used to being on the water, and they're going through rough seas. Your body starts to adapt to the motion of the ocean when you spend a lot of time on the water in boats. But even going from a large ship, which these guys have been on, into smaller boats, people that aren't used to it, they can definitely get seasick. And that's probably what's going on here.
30 seconds! Got me with you!
Port side stick, starboard side stick. Move fast and clear those murder holes.
In a Navy vessel, the starboard side is, as you're looking forward in the vessel, it's the right-hand side. The port side is the left-hand side. So he's saying the stick, which is just a group of people that are on the starboard side, he's just giving them instructions. United States military is made up of multiple different branches. You have the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps. In this scene right here, you see Navy boats that are bringing U.S. Army soldiers to the shore. As soon as they hit the shore, they're gonna be doing what the Army does. While they're in the water, they're doing what the Navy does. You have to have a good relationship between the services in order to get the job done, and they certainly are showing that here.
Want to see plenty of beef between men. 5 men to shoot the opportunity. 1 man's a waste of ammo.
What he's talking about right there, he's saying keep your dispersion is what we call it, means space yourselves out, don't bunch up in a group. If you're all together in a tight group, you become an easy target for the enemy because they don't have to shoot very accurately and they'll hit one of you. If you're in a group, they shoot a burst of ammunition, they could take out 3, 4, or 5 guys that are in that group. What that sergeant is telling them is keep your distance from each other so you make yourselves harder targets. Most of the times when you do some kind of an amphibious operation coming over the beach, you're gonna get wet. There's a chance that you could possibly stay dry, but it's a pretty small chance. It's one of the things that makes coming over the beach and amphibious operations so hard. Not only does it make you cold, but it affects your gear, your radios, your weapons, everything gets affected, especially by salt water. It's a real challenge and it's something you have to contend with because it's gonna happen. One of the things that makes Saving Private Ryan so realistic is that it doesn't shy away from showing the horrific, graphic nature of war. War is absolutely violence. It's killing and it's death, maiming human beings, and it shows that really without any mercy in this opening scene. This is actually a nightmare scenario, coming across an open area, which starts with the water and then goes onto the beach, and you're facing elevated machine gun positions from the enemy. They're shooting down at you from a totally protected position. So what do you do in a situation like that? How do you face that? Well, what you have to do, and it's very counterintuitive, is you have to move forward. As a leader or as just one of these troops that's out there trying to survive this situation, you might think, I just want to stay here and hide, I don't want to move, but what you have to do is move. And what that also means is if you are with one of your friends and they get hit, you might not be able to help them. And the best thing you can possibly do for them is to continue to advance. That's what makes this scene so hard to watch. Guys are having to, at that moment, make a decision between staying with their friend and dying together or moving forward to try and accomplish the mission. It's a horrible situation to be in.
Navy beat battalion, sir! I gotta clear these obstacles! Make holes for the tank!
The Navy had units that would go into the beach and clear out obstacles. They'd also go and try and clear out obstacles that were in the water or on the beach before the invasion even starts. The predecessors to the SEAL teams were those guys, the underwater demolition units. And if you really want to get specific about it, in the Battle of Tarawa over in the Pacific, There was a operation that took place where the Marine Corps was taking that island and they hit a bunch of underwater reefs with the boats, and the boats got held up on those reefs. And so the Marines had to get out and they had to go across about 600 yards of water before they got to the beach, and they took massive casualties. It was a horrendous scene. And the US military, the Navy, and the Marine Corps realized that we needed to have someone that could figure out what was under the water as they got closer to the beach, and if there was obstacles there, then to get rid of them. And so they formed up the Navy Combat Demolition Units, and those were the guys that eventually became the underwater demolition teams, and those are the guys that eventually became the SEAL teams.
All the others foundering in the channel!
Order, sir! You go somewhere else! I'm clearing this one!
Come on, Briggs!
One of the most important things about the US military and any good military organization is that they use something called decentralized command. There's not some senior person at the top of the rank structure making every single decision for the people on the front lines. The people on the front lines understand what it is that they're supposed to get done, and then they go and do it by any means that they see fit. So sometimes there might be a little conflict, but as you can see, Tom Hanks's character, they have a little bit of a discussion, but it lasts 2 sentences, and then they move on and go and try and achieve the objective. That's decentralized command, and you see it in action there. This scene depicts the incredible bravery that these soldiers had to storm forward, facing a high percentage chance of them being killed or gravely wounded. This is one of those epic battle scenes that, again, reflects the courage of the frontline soldiers. Next up, we have Apocalypse Now.
Man, this is better than Disneyland.
The premise of this movie is that there's a guy, Colonel Kurtz, that has gone native, gone rogue, and the US military decides that he needs to be taken out, and so they send a special forces soldier along with a bunch of Navy patrol boat personnel up to go and kill him. This is a movie. Having someone go completely rogue like that is pretty unrealistic. It would get picked up on and they'd be taken out of that situation and put into some place where they could recover and get a grip on reality again. One of the things that was unique about Viet Nâm was the river system that flowed throughout the country in the Mekong Delta and other areas. You know, they had what we called the Brown Water Navy, the predecessor to the special boat teams, which we now have, was guys driving small boats that could push up into these enemy-controlled areas and conduct operations, and that's pretty much what is taking place in Apocalypse Now.
Purple haze, look! Jeep, get a good whip.
They've got a chief petty officer in charge of this vessel. A chief petty officer in the Navy is a very proud rank. They say in the Navy that chiefs run the Navy. Navy chiefs are very experienced tactically. They understand what the job is, and they do what they need to do to get the job done.
You can't picture me in Vietnam. She pictures me at home having a beer watching TV.
You might be wondering, well, these guys are out on patrol. They seem to be joking around. They seem to be carefree. You got to remember that anyone in the military, SEALs included, we're just people. And people have lives, and they've got girlfriends back home, and they've got other things going on, and they want to laugh and have a good time. You know, this would be obviously tactically unsound to light off a purple smoke and give your position away to the enemy and actually obscure the vision of the people that are on the boat. That's a little bit unrealistic, but for the fact that they are sort of relaxed because there's no actual combat taking place, that can happen. Now, depending on where you are, you need to use caution, and it certainly seems that in this scene, they've allowed a little bit too much slack, and they're about to get a rude awakening.
Hey, land!
It's an ambush. What you see kind of looks like fireworks, and I think, in fact, they probably are fireworks. I think what they're trying to simulate is tracer fire, bullets that leave glowing red or glowing green in the air when they shoot. It's a little unrealistic because you can tell that they don't have a lot of velocity. When tracer rounds are coming at you, they're moving a lot faster than these. But I think that's just the limitations of special effects for this scene. And then what you see is the reaction from the boat, which is a pretty standard reaction. What they do is, as quickly as possible, return a heavy volume of fire from their machine guns and try and move the boat out of the kill zone, which is the area of the ambush where if you stay there, you're gonna die. As far as the weapons that they're using, they're pretty standard Vietnam era weapons. They've got some M60 machine guns, they've got a dual mounted 50 caliber machine gun, and they've got M16s. That's what they used in Vietnam for sure. The Vietnam War from the SEAL team perspective is those are the guys that really established the reputation of the SEAL teams by the operations that they conducted. They just did an outstanding job taking the fight to the enemy in a very unconventional way. The SEALs that raised me in the SEAL teams, some of them were the old Vietnam guys, and it was an honor to be able to learn from them. Next, G.I. Jane. The premise of this movie is that there is a female that is going through SEAL training that has not happened before. It looks like what they are attempting to portray is some kind of SEER training, which is survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, and it's training in case you're ever captured by the enemy in a time of war. They start with being woken up with water being thrown on her. When you go to SEER school, you're definitely going to experience all kinds of little minor aggravations. Just being in a SEAL platoon, you're going to get woken up by your buddies with water being thrown on you. So that's something that everyone's going to experience. They're trying to torment you mentally for two reasons. One, to make sure that you can kind of deal with the mental frustration of people bothering you, and two, because it's funny.
What is your father's name? Simple question, Lieutenant. No reason not to answer unless you want to bleed. What is your father's name?
Dad.
They're showing her in a situation where she's being tied up as if she was a prisoner of war. That's what they're trying to simulate. And then, they're going to try and mimic what they think the prisoner of war might experience. In SEER school, you're going to be hungry, you're going to get slapped around, you're going to get asked a bunch of questions in order to try and prepare you for those situations should they unfold.
Why didn't you carry out your wounded, Lieutenant? Was he too heavy?
You're not getting anything out of me.
It looks like the Master Chief is really being pretty brutal with a beatdown to the young lieutenant, and I think it's just a lot of Hollywood activities going on. There are limitations to what they can do to the students that are going through it, but it's best for the training if people don't know what to expect when they get there. So I actually don't want to talk too much in detail about it because it's an experience that hits people different ways. The training is based on lessons learned from guys that were captured in Korea and Vietnam and what they learned from those horrible environments. I'll just say that this movie doesn't seem very realistic.
You think we should go easy on women, Lieutenant?
Fuck you.
I'm so glad we
At this point, it seems like they've gotten a little crazy. Sometimes they portray things a different way, but the SEAL teams is a rough place to be. Being in a SEAL platoon or at a SEAL team or in the military in general, it's a harsh environment. Harsh things happen.
2 fire teams are still in the war.
You might think that there's a technique to get through something like waterboarding, but the bottom line is there's no technique for not being able to breathe. You can breath hold for a little while, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, but eventually you're gonna need air and you're gonna pass out. It's just another method of making you uncomfortable and trying to get you used to being uncomfortable. And they're also trying to show you that you have limitations. Eventually what you have to do is give some information so that you can survive. And that's acceptable, and you do your best to resist and not give away any information that could cost the lives of fellow service members, but you also want to survive, and so that's a tough bridge to gap. One of the things that happened in previous wars is people felt like if they had broken, that they were less of a man for breaking. Everyone has a breaking point, and you need to understand how to contend with that psychologically.
Yeah, you got something to tell me? Don't do it. Don't do it.
Kill you, O'Neill.
At this point, she's not doing a very good job because she's about to get killed. She's not giving up any information. What she should actually do is try and craft some kind of a story that stalls or prolongs her life. The goal is to give enough information that you survive, but not enough information that the enemy can actually act. And if you're giving a little bit of information, they think they can get more out of you. Then you can stay alive a little bit longer and hopefully make it out.
Master Chief?
Seek life elsewhere.
Suck my...
In the SEAL teams, you go through a lot of different schools and you pass a lot of different tests. When you get done with one test, what you do is you go on to the next one. You finish that achievement and you move on. There's no big celebration of making it through some block of training. You just carry on and do your job. Navy SEALs.
Describe your method of entry.
I came through a skylight.
And you had contact in the hallway?
One confirmed.
When you get done with a mission, you want to review how the mission went from a tactical perspective and see if there are any lessons learned. No one's going to remember every little thing that they did, but hopefully when you take all the information from all the different individuals, you can paint a pretty good picture of what happened. And once you get done with that, then you do a intelligence debrief to make sure you've gathered good information, and that information will then get disseminated through the intelligence community so that they can put all the pieces of intelligence together to get broader knowledge of the enemy.
What was your actions at the objective area?
I entered the room in the third position, swept left to right.
When you go into a room, obviously you all can't go into the room at the exact same moment. So the first person goes in, that's the number 1 person. The second person that goes in is the number 2 person. The third person that goes in is the number 3 person, and it goes right on down the line. So that's all it is. There's no rocket science there. And then he did a normal room entry and swept from left to right.
Co-pilot had serious internal injuries. I stabilized him, prepared to move. That's it hit the fan.
The primary LZ was aborted. I covered their movement to the secondary.
The primary LZ is the primary landing zone. If you're taking down a target or you're conducting an operation, when you leave, you're gonna go get picked up somewhere. The first place you plan to go get picked up by helicopters is called the primary landing zone. And if that one is fouled for whatever reason, there's enemy there or there's some problem with it, then you'll move on to the secondary. And then if that one's got a problem, you'll move on to the tertiary. So in this particular scene, they tried to go to the primary landing zone, LZ, and there was a problem with it, so they apparently moved to the secondary.
You engaged hostiles?
I vaporized hostiles.
When you're in the military, you follow the rules of engagement, and rules of engagement do shift depending on the situation. The rules of engagement definitely allow you to defend yourself and the mission. If you shoot your weapon at somebody that's acting in a hostile manner, it's really no factor.
Oh, and by the way, thanks for the hot tip on the 100 assholes we encountered at your soft targets. Makes you wonder why they call it intelligence.
When he's describing a soft target, that's generally a description of a target that you think is going to be pretty easy to take down, meaning there's not going to be a lot of resistance. Whereas a hard target you'd be expecting resistance and maybe some fortified positions. Regardless, soft target or hard target, you got to prepare for some kind of a worst case scenario. You got to have contingencies to handle any target. Even if you go in thinking it's going to be soft, it could go hard. You have to anticipate that it could. That was just the breakdown from GQ. Thanks for watching.